Ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so growing up, I lived in a haunted house. I moved in this house when I was 6 years old, and I was pretty sheltered. Never watched scary movies. I wasn't allowed to from my parents. So I really didn't understand what was happening to me at the time. So I was really quiet about it and didn't tell anybody. Not until I was a little bit older, but I would always see the same woman come into my room, come into the bathroom at random times, and she would scare me. But I feel like it wasn't intentional. I was just scared because I could see a see-through woman staring at me. But I felt like she was sad, and I wouldn't want to sleep. I'd turn the lights on to my room. I had a thing with my closets. I'd always have to have the closet door closed. I was terrified of this woman. Um, the final straw for me when I finally spoke up when I was about maybe 8, I was dead asleep and I heard whispers of my name. And I remember getting up quick because I'm expecting this woman and she's there staring at me. And I'm paralyzed in fear. I'm 8. And I remember just staying there all night until I finally mustered up the courage to just throw a sheet over my head. And I stayed there for maybe like 5 minutes. And when I pulled the sheet back off, she was gone. And I felt like at this point I had to speak up. I had to say something because I can't sleep at night. I have bags under my eyes. I'm not paying attention at school. So I finally told my mom about it. And my mom was so supportive, believed me, got the house blessed, stopped seeing that woman. Great. Problem solved, right? Hmm. Then I would say maybe 2 months after that, I started seeing shadows. Like I would see a silhouette of a boy and hear laughter, and it was a shadow. And I thought, oh, okay, that's new. That's not the woman. Um, and these shadows would appear in the middle of the night. And I used to have this really small chihuahua. I loved him to death. His name is Chewy. He used to sleep with me in the bed. And I remember one of the times I was asleep, and this is when I was in like middle school at this point. Um, I was asleep with him in the bed, and he would get up a lot in the middle of the night and start growling at the hallway. And I remember getting up, seeing nothing. It was pitch black, but slowly grabbing him. And he's almost paralyzed in fear too, just sitting there growling with all the hair standing up on his back. And I used to grab him, turn around, and fall back asleep because I didn't want to know anything what was going on. Um, I would always see this dark, shadowed figure. It was long, skinny, dark. The head of this figure would touch the roof, like of my door frame. Like it was so big. And I never told anybody that. And not until my husband, at the time, my boyfriend, he would spend the night at our house. And I remember one of the times I was asleep, I felt him throw his body over me. And at the time, I'm trying to sleep and he's throwing his body over me. I'm like, dude, get off. And I went back to sleep. But not until the morning when my husband, at the time my boyfriend, was telling me that, hey, I need to talk to you. I'm like, okay, like, what's going on? He's like, no, I need to talk to you. There's something in your house. And I just stopped and I looked at him. Like, what do you mean? Never told anybody this. I don't want anybody to think I was crazy, right? He's like, last night in your room, I saw a shadow. And I just like stood there listening to him. And I'm like, continue. I thought, he was trying to rationalize, trying to figure out, okay, there's a shadow, looks like a person. It's probably like the moonlight, like reflection, right? He looks over to my window, curtains are closed. So he's like, okay, that that's not a reflection. That's not a shadow from the moon that's casting, right? So he looks at this thing and he says it moves. It starts like almost walking towards my side of the bed. and it goes back again to his, and then it runs over like to where I'm at. And that's when he threw himself over me, trying to protect me. That's what I was feeling in the middle of the night, and I was telling him, get off me. But he stood there and he threw himself over me. And he said he didn't want to let go. He was paralyzed in fear, didn't sleep all night. And so when he told me that, I'm like, I know what you're talking about. And he's like, that? What do you mean? I go, I've been seeing this since I was a kid, and I just try to ignore it. And when we're having this conversation, my dad walked in, and he was almost like paralyzed in fear. And he looked at me and my husband, at the time my boyfriend, and he said, are you guys talking about the shadow? And I just gasped, like, you know about the shadow too? He's like, yeah, like the really tall shadow, super dark, thin, and you always get like the hairs on your back that stand up. And I'm like, yeah. Come to find out, my dad was experiencing the same thing I was, but he didn't want to say anything either because he didn't want to scare us. After that, I got like a ton of sleep paralysis, kept seeing the shadow. I ended up moving out, got married. We had an apartment, and the creepy thing is, when I was in this apartment, a random night I got up like hyperventilating. I couldn't sleep. I was panicking. I had my son at the time. I wanted to take my son and leave my apartment, and I wanted to spend the night at a hotel. And I don't know why, but I was panicking. Like, I was scared. I felt like something was in our apartment. And my husband's like, you're fine, relax, you need to calm down. And I was just like, no, I'm not calming down. I was awake the whole night. Come to find out, my parents still live in that house. My mom saged that house that night. I had no idea. So yeah, very creepy story. Creepy house.